folks. I believe we are recording. A very warm welcome to everyone who has joined the call. And again, second Cordent community call. Cordent, we went GA in January, February, and then the project has been developing. The project is getting some massive interest in terms of platform engineering, organic blogs. People are talking about it. So nice to see everyone who has joined the Cordant community call. My name is Prithvi Raj. I am a community manager at Mirantis, and I am helping the Cordant community reach folks and become the powerful open source tool that we hope the Cordant tool is supposed to become. We'll be talking about obviously a quick welcome to everyone who has joined in. A lot of folks joined in the last call. A lot of folks are joining today's call. So glad to see everyone who has joined in. Quickly, we'll have introduction to new members on the call. I saw a couple of folks who had joined in. I believe a lot of folks are joining from the last call itself. So I'll maybe leave the introductions to the end of this call. But I saw a couple of new folks had joined in. We'll quickly go through the community updates, what's happened in the community in the last 1 month, what's coming up. Then we'll have the cluster manager updates coming up from Ekaterina. Then we'll have the KSM state manager updates from Artem, and then we'll have updates on KOF and a quick demo by Alexei. And then we'll have Darren who will share a little bit on their Cordant usage and what's been feedback from his side for the community. And then we'll wrap it up with a quick set of questions and open floor discussion. So quickly moving on to the community updates, we have some good things coming up in the community. Obviously, KubeCon India, folks from the Cordant community, including me, Satyam Bhardwaj, Bharat, joined in KubeCon India, and we had some amazing feedback. Before that, we gave a talk at CET and CF Hyderabad meetup, and we have seen a lot of stars growing for Cordant. I think it's close to 500 stars. I know, I mean, that's less in terms of a GitHub project, but the project is picking up, and we are seeing some good vested interest around Cordant. Cordant 1.2 released at the end of July, and we are almost near to 1.3. But some good feedback around 1.2 folks have been using. A lot of folks from different organizations, different backgrounds have been coming up with feedback in the Cordant Slack. The Cordant 1.0 release announcement got live on the CNCF blog page. I know it's a little late for that to come out, but yeah, that's how things work on the CNCF side of things. So we need to be a little patient, but and then we have some good talks coming up. There's platform engineering meetup happening in Bangalore. That's where we're going to talk about Cordant, CloudCon Sydney, SRE Day London, DevConf US. So there are a lot of conferences that community folks from Cordant are going to talk about Cordant, including DevOps Kerala, KubeCon North America, and Cloud Native Kuala Lumpur. So stay tuned for what's coming up in terms of the Cordant community. And obviously with Cordant 1.3, we'll see some more updates coming up to Cordant. Also on the tutorial side of things, we are hoping to have one CNCF webinar, which will be joined by Wahab and Simon from Project Sweltos. So we'll be talking about Cordant state management side of things. And then we are also hoping once the Cordant FinOps agent is up on the Cordant catalog as a service template, we'll have Satyam, who has worked extensively behind it, create a tutorial on the open source side of things. With this, in the interest of time, I'll allow Ekaterina to come up and talk about the updates to the Cordant cluster manager. And Ekaterina, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ekaterina, a developer on the Cordant project from the cluster management team, and I'm excited to give you a short update on the KCM part. I will show you some of the major updates and some improvements that have been made since our last community meeting. The major update is that we released KCM 1.2.0. and we are now in progress of releasing the 1.3.0. The 1.3.0 release is coming very soon. It is planned to happen today, but I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to all of our contributors for their hard work. We really appreciate it. Yeah, I will focus on KSM updates only, and my colleagues from KSM and COF teams will follow with their own updates. About KCM 1.2.0, this release was primarily focused on bug fixes and template improvements. But one of the most important features is that we introduced a new OpenStack hosted cluster template. Also, we made several key improvements to our existing template. For example, added support for manager parameters override in the Cosmotron provider template, and made image definitions more flexible in our Azure templates. The important bug fix in OpenStack CCM configuration has been landed. The CCM now has a cluster name explicitly defined to avoid unexpected behavior. And the last thing about this release is that KCM now supports ARM64 architecture with a small limitation. The Infoblox provider doesn't yet support ARM64. But if your environment doesn't require the Infoblox provider, you can still deploy k0rdent on ARM64 by simply disabling this provider in the management object. Yeah, that's all from the 1.2.0 point, and let's move on to the upcoming KCM 1.3.0. This release will include several important bug fixes. For example, the remote cluster template now will respect the use sudo parameter when installing CA certificates, and we fixed an issue where Helm extensions could not be installed on hosted clusters deployed in a private self-signed registry, especially when the registry contains subpaths. Of course, it's just a small part, and for a complete list of all bug fixes, you can check the release notes in our project. The last thing I want to mention is that we introduced an important feature in 1.3.0 is a telemetry collection. Telemetry collects important information from cluster deployments, including cluster sizes, versions, GPU usage, and more. It really allows our team to better understand how KCM is being used in real-world deployments, and it gives us a foundation for future improvements. Important things to note that no personal data is collected. We ensure complete user privacy. All collected data is anonymized and doesn't contain any personal information. Of course, telemetry can be configured in different ways. It can be done in the management object under the telemetry block of the KCM configuration section. Telemetry has three modes. Three modes available. The first mode, which is online. Online mode sends anonymized metrics to segment.io. The second mode is local. When you don't have access to internet, you can still collect telemetry in local mode. The telemetry data will be stored in local files in this case. And third case, when telemetry is not needed, you can disable it completely. Of course, some telemetry settings I didn't mention right now, but I didn't want to go too deep here. A detailed instruction will be available in our docs, of course. So yeah, in summary, over the past month, we have received critical bug fixes, template improvements, ARM64, and telemetry support. Yeah, that's it from my side right now. Thank you for your attention. Happy to answer any questions if you have. And I'm going to pass the floor to Artem from the KSM team.
Hello, everybody. I'm Artem, and I'm from the k0rdent state management team and involved in the development of the so-called KSM part, which is responsible for deploying and tracking the state of the workloads in managed clusters. So I'm first time here in the community meeting. So what changes were made from the last release to following release, which we expect to be released today, as Ekaterina already said. So I think that you already know that historically k0rdent depends on the project Sveltos as an underlying CD solution. So to deploy stuff to managed clusters, we used project Sveltos, controllers, and API. And we wanted to change this situation, so we won't stick to the single solution. That's why we developed the provider agnostic update for the KSM part. So at the moment, we still have Project Sveltos as a built-in underlying CD solution. However, now we can first disable it, and the second, we can develop our other KSM providers, which will be used to deploy stuff to managed clusters. So now we can use Argo CD or Flux or whatever else. This was achieved by extending the k0rdent API with a couple of new types, like state management provider, which defines the workloads which are responsible for provisioning workloads on managed clusters, the adapter, which is responsible for, let's say, converting k0rdent API object to provider-specific API object, and the service set, which acts as a man in the middle between the major k0rdent API objects like cluster deployment and multi-cluster services, and provider-specific objects like profiles and cluster profiles in Sveltos, applications in Argo CD, and so on. So now we can develop additional providers. We were not pinned only to Project Sveltos, and I hope that we made k0rdent state management much more flexible. This is the major updates, the major update from our team. There are also, of course, some bug fixes, but I think that's it. What I want to introduce. So, and I will pass the word to Alexei.
Thanks, Artem. If there are no questions, Artem, let me share my screen to show a little demo of the KOF and cover the major updates we have. So this release was mostly dedicated to internal observability and also the observability for the management cluster internals. Like we added some Flux control plane dashboards. Also, we cover some internal k0rdent object statuses with kube state metrics, where some condition statuses are converted into the metrics that you could do some dashboards and monitoring. This is how it looks like. And the most important part of the internal observability is what basically to do if you have no data in the dashboards or your Grafana is not working. So in this case, we developed the internal UI, which currently resides in the KOF operator. And we have three tabs here. One is covering the Prometheus targets, which you can see now. And here is some important information which you can gather from collectors. Each collector currently has its own Prometheus small server, but to have a full picture, you have to go over all the OpenTelemetry collectors and basically what this COF UI is doing. It goes over all of them and give you a full picture of what metrics you have, what's endpoint you monitor. And if you have any issue, you can basically see it like this error message, why the specific metrics resource is down. This is very helpful to troubleshoot why your metrics are not collected, or why maybe some issue is misconfiguration. It's not presented in the screen, but what we recently added as well is some duplication detection. If for some reason your endpoint is monitored twice, probably by two different collectors, then it could lead to some unpleasant consequences like the duplication of data series, and your data might be just duplicated. So to avoid that, we basically added this duplication detection, and now you can be 100% sure that you're collecting metrics only once. The second tab here is the internal state of the OpenTelemetry collectors itself. We go over all the clusters, and you can see in the example here that some collectors like it's unhealthy. You can check the pod status from here, the basic like reason why it's unhealthy, and as well, if the pod is healthy, you can also check the internal metrics for the collectors itself. Like I don't know, maybe you have run out of capacity, maybe you are just sending too much data. So all of that is now collected and presented in this UI, so you can troubleshoot why your collectors are not working well or unhealthy. And the last part we have here is basically the same for the storage part. Maybe you are sending data and all the data is collected perfectly, but you have a problem with your storage part, which is in our case Victoria metrics and Victoria logs. So we go over all the pods for Victoria metrics and Victoria logs, and also collects internal information and the healthy status, and it's presented in a very similar way, like what data we have here. Maybe you run out of memory, maybe you run out of disk, that kind of stuff. That's basically it from my side. Of course, a lot of fixes and small improvements, but this is the major updates.
Thank you so much, Alexei, Artem, Katrina. I think there were some exciting updates for the community, and some exciting stuff around all the three subcomponents of k0rdent. I could have pointed a lot of things, but there are so many updates that I would want to keep it short. Maybe I would open the floor for some questions if there are any questions for Artem and Katrina or Alexei around the updates for the respective subcomponents, or else we can move on to Darren. So are there any questions? Yeah, I think Darren is raising his hand. Darren, go ahead.
The change to KSM, is that being raised? Is that in the new release, or is that in the present release? I missed that.
Artem, would you like to answer that?
Sorry.
Sorry, the change to KSM,
Yes.
where you now can use Flux or Argo, is that in the present release, or is that coming up in the next release?
This will be introduced in the release which we expect today, in the version 1.3.0. However, we did not develop additional providers, so it's on the user side. if user wants, user can develop their own controller, which will be used to produce Flux or Argo specific objects out of k0rdent API object.
Okay, and is that being documented then? How you could do that? Is that
Sure.
Okay.
It will be documented.
Okay? That was the only question I had.
Thanks, Darren. Any other questions from anyone? All right, I see no other questions. Then, Darren, the floor is all yours to share your experience with k0rdent and any feedback for the community, and then maybe we can just open the floor for any last Q&A and close.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I think I spoke last time. Essentially, I had been looking at Cluster API and Sveltos, and building clusters manually and then registering them with Sveltos. And in the course of becoming familiar with those particular open source projects, I stumbled across k0rdent, which obviously does what I was trying to do manually in a higher abstraction, really, by having a cluster deployment CRD that ties those two pieces of open source software together. So I've been testing various deployments of clusters. So thanks to Katrina, I've been deploying EKS managed clusters with bring your own CNI. So in my case, I use Cilium, generally Cilium Enterprise, and that's worked really well. I've recently been testing the standalone version, which obviously deploys you a KOS cluster. And again, that's been very efficient. I really like the way it does it. Very simple CRD, probably 3 or 4 lines. I've been able to deploy that quite quickly in AWS. I gave a demo a couple of weeks ago now, internally, on deploying that. And then just recently, I've just been testing the hosted control plane. And again, thanks to some help from Slack and the Mirantis team, I've got that also now sorted out. So the kind of objective for me really is to understand how to deploy k0rdent in various scenarios. So either as a managed cluster, as a standalone, or using hosted control plane, with the aim of using it in different environments. So, for example, for the edge, hosted control plane is really good because obviously you can have a central management cluster hosting the control planes of your edge clusters and manage it all from there. So again, that's really efficient. For dev and test environments, again, hosting using hosted control planes and hosting your services on a central management cluster, again, cuts down resources and again, much more efficient. But then if you want to use EKS, which is a very powerful managed cluster scale out, k0rdent allows me to do those things. So at present, that's kind of where I am, testing all the components and different deployment scenarios. In terms of feedback, it's been really good. I think the one thing, and I don't know if perhaps it's what I'm doing, but I use Cilium. So for a managed cluster, using Cilium is really easy. It's a couple of settings in the cluster deployment. I'm not sure, and again, I guess perhaps the Mirantis team can perhaps feedback on this. I'm not sure whether it's possible to, with the KOS cluster, whether it's also possible to bring your own CNI. because what I've noticed is by default it installs Calico, which again is there's nothing wrong with Calico, but I would like to be able to deploy into my standalone cluster Cilium, and also into the hosted control plane cluster that also deploys Calico. So I don't know if there's a tweak in the CRD that I've missed, or whether it's possible. I don't know if there's some feedback on that.
Thank you so much, Darren. I think I'll like to pause you for a bit. So there are a couple of things. One is on the deployment scenario side of things, which I also believe is essential, and I would like to open the floor if someone would like to talk about any different deployment scenarios, or maybe we can come back to Darren on the community Slack. So does someone want to take it up to talk about the different deployment scenarios, and then we'll take up the K0s side of things, having the option to have a different CNI other than Calico. Does someone want to talk about the different deployment scenarios? Yeah, I guess everyone's been pretty quiet today, but yeah, Darren, I mean, if I have to just chime in here, I get the different deployment scenarios part, the hosted control plane side of things, or a managed cluster or an EKS cluster. I think these are good examples, but as a community member, I would like to drive some more deployment scenarios and document them. So maybe by the next community call, you can expect a response on that aspect, and I can come up with some different deployment scenarios for you, so that it enables you to make things easier for yourself. And on the CNI side of things, to answer you, yes, obviously the inbuilt one is the Calico CNI, but you can use a K0s cluster with a Cilium CNI as well. That shouldn't be a problem. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I mean it does for the EKS. It's just for the non-EKS, like a K0s cluster deployed using k0rdent for the host control plane. I don't know if that's possible, but I guess I can pick it up in the Slack.
Sure, that sounds good. All right, folks. First of all, thank you so much, Darren, for sharing that feedback. I believe that will be taken positively amongst the folks who are already working on building k0rdent. And by the next call, we can have some deployment scenarios and have a section to discuss that. One of the community members from log site, he was supposed to join us. His name is Soren Becker, but he was unable to join in because he had another call at this time. But Soren will join us in the next call, and he has some good community feedback for us. And he's been using k0rdent for a while. John Kian, he's based out of San Francisco. He also wanted to join in, and he was preparing to put in some contributions around the vector database, vector DB. So I believe that can be a good feedback for the community. So these are a couple of things perhaps we'll have some time to discuss in the next community call. But yeah, that's all from the community standpoint. If I have to share my screen one last time on what upcoming community goals we have, although we have discussed it in the last community call, but it's going to be the same. We have to add more to the k0rdent tutorials. I'm hoping that Satyam adds one with the FinOps agent. We'll have a community mailing list soon. And we also need to nominate some maintainers for the project as well. So these are the things that we'll be focusing on moving ahead, and I'm looking forward to the 1.3 release that will happen today. All the best to the folks who are working behind it, Artem, Ekaterina, Wahab, Alexi, and everyone, Dennis, and everyone else who's working behind the release. And we'll get some updates on 1.3 in the next call. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone who's joined in. Quick shout out to Darren once again for sharing his feedback, and looking forward to talking more about k0rdent internally with your team as well. With this, I'll stop presenting my screen, and we'll also look forward to the CNCF webinar by Wahab. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining in, and see you again in the September call. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.